behalf of the League of Women Voters of Vermont, I welcome you to another edition of Spotlight on Issues. I'm Janet Kramer, a member-at-large of the League of Women Voters in Vermont, and my guest is Representative Carolyn Partridge of Windham, Vermont, and chair of the Vermont House Agriculture and Forest Products Committee. The issue under study today is agriculture. The last National Convention of the League of Women Voters of the United States decided to do a national agricultural update, focusing narrowly on current technology and issues in agriculture, including genetically modified organisms, GMOs, herbicides, pesticides, agriculture water pollution, aquifer depletion, antibiotics in livestock, and accurate food labeling, and 2, current agriculture finance issues, including consolidation in agricultural industries, crop subsidies, and federal agricultural regulatory process. Clearly, we're not going to take on the whole topic in this half hour. Instead, we'll look at how our state legislature may respond to some questions, such as how the small farms of Vermont are likely to be affected by some of the national policy setting, from GMOs to the management of manure on fields, and how the Federal Drug Administration rules affect our small holdings agriculture. Carolyn, as chair of the Agriculture and Forest Products Committee, what are the major issues your committee is looking at in the coming legislative session? What do you see as likely to be voted on in this coming session?
Well, Janet, thank you very much. It's a delight to be here with you. It's probably on our plate will be a number of things, but as you know, in Vermont over the last several years, we have really been trying to prioritize and incentivize the local foods movement. Mm-hmm. And so we will continue to work on the farm to plate bill. It's been in place, and they continue. The Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund continues to do an excellent job developing that. A couple of years ago, we passed a Working Lands Enterprise initiative, and right now it's working very well. The Agency of Agriculture under Secretary Chuck Ross and his crew is doing a great job getting the money out. The question will be where we go, in terms of money. This coming year, as we all know, money is tight, budgets are tight, but I would like to see a sizable chunk of money invested, further in the Working Lands Initiative, because I believe that is one of the major job development, job creation, economic development bills that we have. And
could you describe that a little more for people who may not be familiar with it?
Sure. A couple of years ago, we passed the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, which put aside 3 pots of money to help local farmers, entrepreneurs, give them a boost. So some of the money was for small grants. This was giving people small grants that would help them leverage capital, get them off the ground a bit, maybe take their business to the next step. Another bucket of money was for technical help, a handholder in a way, someone to guide them to capital, to an increase if they wanted to expand their business, how could they go through the permit process, that sort of thing. And then the final bucket of money was for larger infrastructure. We really purposely focused on not only agriculture and farming, but forest products. And so an example could have been a kiln drying facility for foresters, or Black River Produce is actually expanded to, and Mark Curran and his crew have expanded to local meats and processing local meats, and so they've gotten a grant. So those were the 3 buckets of money that we and we worked very hard on that bill. It was a painstaking process, and it went in 2 years ago. The governor put more money in it last year, and hopefully they're going to have some money for it this year as well. So that's working lands. I think if you ask what we're going to be working on this year, there's a water quality bill that's going to address agricultural issues as well, and we will be asking for possession of that bill as a committee to take a look at that as well.
Will it go to other committees as well?
The primary committee for that will be under Representative David Dean. Everybody in Windham County is familiar with David from Westminster, and he is the chair of Fish, Wildlife, and Water Resources. So his committee will be the primary committee of jurisdiction.
But you're asking to take possession of most of the work, is what I'm hearing.
Not most of the work, just the agricultural pieces of it, because it does address agriculture, and my committee feels strongly that they would like to take a close look at that.
Great. Some other issues. I know you have worked very hard on GMOs, genetically modified organisms, in our food system. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know it's easy to talk a long time about it.
Sure. Last year, we passed H112, which was a bill regarding the labeling of food produced with genetic engineering. And I actually prefer to use the term genetic engineering because GMO is, when it comes to the FDA and labeling, it can be confusing.
Okay.
But at any rate, we did pass it. We had worked on it the previous year as well, but ran out of time at the end of the session. It went to judiciary, and they did not have time to work on it. It was very end of this. That was the same year we did working lands, and so we ran out of time. This last year, we devoted a large chunk of time to the GE labeling bill. We were able to get it through my committee, the Judiciary Committee, and it went out to the House where it passed, and very strong. I think it was 99 to 42. It is now in the Senate, and my expectation is that they will be taking it up and hopefully passing it. And I think everybody should know that if they feel strongly about the labeling of their food as to whether it is produced with genetic engineering, they should contact their senators.
I was going to ask, who is your counterpart in the Senate?
I have two counterparts, Senator Jeanette White and Senator Peter Galbraith.
Okay.
And people can also go to the Vermont.gov site or the legislative site, and I'll give that. It's www.leg.state, spelled out, .vt.us. And you can it's a good site. You can click on names and find out who represents you and weigh in with them.
Much of what we are talking about is not just the state of Vermont. It's affected by federal legislation or lack of it. What would happen, what will happen, do you predict, if the agricultural bill does not pass, in the farm bill in the national legislature?
My understanding, and I was just at a legislative conference, my understanding is that they're going to have a continuing resolution, or they're going to an extension, I should say, an extension of the farm bill, so that I believe it's extended out 2 months. And I think that they're going to try very hard to get something passed. If they don't, milk prices, there's going to be a significant increase because they'll revert to the old system, which will be paying farmers a very handsome wage for their milk, which I, in a way, support, but it will increase the cost of milk to be significantly more than it is now. So I believe that there'll be enough pressure to get that work done. And we'll see. Maybe they'll just do another extension, but ultimately they're going to have to buckle down and do it.
You raised, when we talked earlier, the extensive uncertainty resulting from the Food Safety and Modernization Act and how that affects small farms, CS, community-supported agriculture, and other the local food movement. Educate us, please.
I'll do my best. It's complicated. But I think I'd like to first say that when I convened my committee for the first time 5 years ago, I believe, I asked my committee to set our priorities. What was the most important thing? And we worked on it fairly, another painstaking conversation. But we came up with food safety as our #1 goal and our #1 objective. The second was economic development and success for farmers. So I want people to keep in mind that food safety is really important to us. But as people know, what's happened before in the country is that there have been tainted food scares. People will remember the spinach situation and the ground beef. And we don't want that to happen. But we also have to keep in mind that that spinach came from farms that were aggregating. It was a number of farms aggregating. And so traceability was difficult. And a lot of what has gone into the Food Safety and Modernization Act is really potentially very good, except that it's going to be applied to all farms, even if it's our local folks who go to the farmer's market and you go and you buy some lettuce from them. You know who you bought it from. So if you get sick, it's very easy to do traceability. So I guess our major gripe with what I'm going to refer to as FSMA now, Food Safety and Modernization Act, our major gripe is that it's not scalable. It's not scaled to our kind of local production. And everyone really is on board with this. The Agency of Agriculture has weighed in. My committee, we got together via email and we sent in a comment to the Food and Drug Administration. There has been an amendment proposed, which is called the Tester-Hagen Amendment, but it exempts farms, excuse me, that produce less than $500,000 in gross sales. However, at least 50% of that has to be direct or to retail or retailers. And part of the problem is that it includes all foods, whether or it could be animal feed. And one of the concerns is that we're really concerned with human consumption, and that number, if it includes animal feed, could disadvantage people. And also, if they market through food hubs, CSAs, institutional food distributors, or selling through any middleman, it exempts them from the exemption. So
some people may not know what CSAs are. That would be helpful.
Community-supported agriculture. And some of you probably have
I'm a member of one, but I think it
would
be useful.
Where you pay a share, you pay for a share, and then every week you get a bag or a box of food. And it works great. It gives the farmer startup money for the beginning of the season, and then you get really wonderful vegetables. Sometimes meat, sometimes eggs, sometimes cheese. It depends, sometimes yarn. Depends on the CSA throughout the entire year. And the great thing is that while the CSAs originally started out basically with summer products, they've now really quite extended into the fall and winter even.
Wonderful. With
root vegetables and other things that can be stored, fruits and what have you. So
how does FSMA then affect them?
Well, they're going to have to comply if they do any of those things. And I think some of the real problems include water quality, water safety, and the testing that's going to be demanded. There is a manure spreading requirement that you have to allow 270 days between the spreading of manure and harvest. Well, I'm sorry, but in Vermont, that doesn't work. And so the record keeping is onerous with inspections, testing, and corrective actions. And non-exempt farms are going to have to deal with a lot of bureaucracy. So we are concerned about that. And it just sort of scratches the surface here.
It sounds as if you have, as a committee, communicated with the national authorities, if you will, FDA and so forth.
We have. We weighed in as a committee. The Agency of Agriculture has weighed in. A number of different groups, National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition has weighed in. Many people have weighed in, including one of my committee members, Representative Will Stevens, who is an organic vegetable farmer from Golden Russet Farm.
Okay.
And it's also going to require workplace safety, that you hire a specific person to do workplace safety rather than just do the work yourself. Like train people, which any good farmer, any good business person is going to do.
So as you said, it's not scalable to local agriculture.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So we've seen in the last, 10 deaths per year, which of course we don't want, but related to produce. But 5 of those were directly related to the consumption of sprouts, not field-grown produce. And so it seems like this response to a problem that is relative. I mean, you think about the number of people who die in car crashes. This is a relatively small number.
And you're talking Vermont statistics.
I'm talking about nationwide.
Nationwide, so
10 deaths.
10 deaths nationwide contaminated food.
Right, 5 of which were sprouts. So it seems like the proposed rule is way out of proportion to, especially when you think about local farmers being way more traceable and standing behind their products. So at any rate, that's a real concern for us in terms of. There's not much we can do about it other than comment, but we are hoping that they are going to come out with another draft set of rules and not put something in place. They've had, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of comments, so hopefully they are going to be taking those into consideration before they do the final draft.
Because you're leading right into one of my concerns. As I read at the very beginning of this interview, what the League of Women Voters is going to be studying. A lot of it appears to be things that need professional education in agriculture or extensive technological knowledge. What can we as lay informed citizens do to make an effect on what happens both in the state and in their national legislature?
Well, I think that there may still be time to comment as individuals, if you would like, to the Food and Drug Administration.
Around the FSMA, or the Food Safety and Modernization
I believe,
Act.
though I'm not going to stake my life on it, that the deadline was November 15th, and I believe that they have extended that. I don't know to what extent they've extended it, but if people are interested, they should definitely contact the Food and Drug Administration. I can give the address if you would like me to, but it has to be in writing. It's 5630 Fishers Lane, room 1061, Rockville, Maryland, and the zip is 20852.
So only in writing, no emails, no telephone calls. Writing is an effective way to lobby in that.
It's, as far as I know, it's the only way. I believe what we did as a committee was we emailed ours in because it was going to be a nip and tuck whether it got the postmark. Now, as it turns out, there was an extension. So, but we emailed it and then we sent a hard copy. So,
how about being in touch with your committee if there are Vermont issues that people are concerned with?
Absolutely, get a hold of us. If you know who your legislator is, you can weigh in with them. You're welcome to contact me or any of the members of my committee. And the best way to do that really is to contact the Sergeant at Arms if you want to talk with us directly. There's a toll-free number, 800-322-5616, and they will take a message and get that to us, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Sometimes, if we're in committee or if we're on the floor, it's hard to get back. We may get back to you by the end of the day. We certainly should. And you can also email us. Usually our email addresses are the first initial of our first name and then our last name. So I'm C. Partridge at leg.state.vt.us.
Great.
So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the other issues that the National League is asking us to look at is sustainability in agriculture. And indeed, I think Vermont is trying to reinvent agriculture in this state rather than sustain it. But I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right, and we are way ahead of the curve. When I go to national conventions or conferences, which I will do in a couple of weeks, we are way ahead of the curve. We are one of the leaders in local food and local agriculture and farmer to consumer direct sales. And people ask me, how did you do it? How did you get the state to make these investments? My friends from New Hampshire have asked me that. And I think that the thing is that people realize that this is a real potential here. When the Farm to Plate initiative was first presented, it was estimated that if we could double the amount that we eat,
that is grown locally.
That is grown locally. We could create 1,500 jobs. We could increase our economic output significantly. And as a matter of fact, within the first year or so, we had created 500 jobs. And that was a 10-year projection. So we saw the benefit to that, and we sort of ran with it. So it's we have an agricultural renaissance, and one of the points of the Working Lands Bill is to help the loggers and the sawmill people and the wood manufacturers come along as well, because we've found some ways to market Vermont products. We have a great brand name, and so we want our wood manufacturers to come along as well.
So what you're really looking at is not just plucking Vermont trees and sending them elsewhere to be processed, but doing more of that in Vermont.
That's exactly right. And anyone who drives Route 91 knows that there you see log trucks all the time heading for Canada. And while we've lost a lot of the infrastructure, which I referenced earlier, we've lost a lot of the infrastructure in terms of sawmills and what have you. We would like to regain that. I will say that one of the reasons that Canada has done so well with its wood products is because they have national health care. And that was one of the stumbling blocks, one of the impediments to our local infrastructure.
Could you expand that a little bit and how you see the difference, how our not having national health care affected the wood industry?
Well, everyone was covered. Everyone's covered in Canada. And they have various ways of paying for it. But, loggers can't necessarily get health insurance. It's very expensive. They're in a very high-risk business. And it was going to cost them tons of money. So either they go uncovered, or they say, you know what, this is risky. I'm going to figure out something else to do. And so, same with sawmills. Sawmill owners were struggling to pay for health care if they could at all. And the good news is that in Vermont, our hope is if we're on target by 2017, we will have a situation where everyone in Vermont is covered.
So what you're really looking at is this wonderful integration of different streams of legislative process working toward the development of a much more successful state. That's
right. And I've said all along, healthcare is the major reason I ever ran for office in the first place. And I've always said that any state that could solve this problem would be a place where businesses would want to come.
Great.
So that is, my hope.
Great. Finally, I want to remind our viewers how it is that the nonpartisan League of Women Voters is studying these issues prior to taking positions and working for governmental change to implement our positions. At its founding in 1919, to help newly enfranchised women voters learn how to exercise their rights, the League of Women Voters decided that simply exercising their vote, casting a ballot, was not full participation in political life. They began helping these new voters learn how to inform themselves on critical questions in their local, state, and national governments. Then, after broad discussion, like our discussion today, consensus taking, and approval by the league boards, we take specific positions that are written, begin lobbying, and often multi-year political efforts to try to make these changes that we see are important for government. Yes, the League is nonpartisan in that we do not support or oppose candidates or political parties, but we have strong, informed opinions on policy decisions taken by these office holders on behalf of the voters they represent. And as office holders, they represent all of us, not just those who voted for them.
That's right.
I'm grateful to you, Representative Partridge, for being here, helping us to be more informed and active participants in understanding agriculture and forest products in this beautiful state.
Well, thank you, Janet, for the opportunity. I've loved doing this, and I really recommend that everyone contact their legislators if they have any concerns or thoughts. And I'm going to co-opt my former district mate's, Michael Bohosky's little motto, which is "Together we govern."
Great. Thank you very much indeed. If this edition of Spotlight on Issues has been helpful to you, certainly has been to me. I learned a lot in the process, both of getting ready for it and then this exchange of information. I invite you all to consider being members of the League of Women Voters. It is an opportunity to know your community, know the process of government in so many different ways, to help be an active, informed citizen and really make a difference for your state.
Janet, if somebody wanted to join or just look into it, how would they do that?
They would look on the website for League of LWV of OFVT.org, and there's a membership form there. There's a very active state board, and our member at large local league. There are some of us who, as I joined the league in the 1960s, have stayed on and become active and continue to be active. But we meet 4 times a year locally. There's a lot of activity going on in Montpelier and up in Chittenden County.
Great.
And you probably see us quite often in the legislature.
Yes, we do, and we appreciate seeing you
Great.
as well. Yeah.
Thank you.